Welcome back. This is day 4 of my 30-day glass skin journey. I want to start today a little differently. Out of every single step in this entire 30-day routine, the double cleanse, the toner, the essence, the serum, all of it. If you only take one thing from this whole series, I want it to be today's topic. Not because the other steps don't matter, but because none of them can undo what unprotected sun exposure does to your skin over time. So today, I'm not just walking you through a product step, I'm walking you through the one habit that will do more for your long-term skin health than anything else we've covered so far. Quick reminder, as always, this is my personal experience and general education, not a substitute for an in-person visit with your own dermatologist, especially if you have any personal or family history of skin cancer. Here's my hook for today. If you've ever thought, I don't really need sunscreen indoors, or I only wear it when I'm at the beach, I need you to sit with me for the next 15 minutes because that belief is one of the most common gaps I see, and it's quietly undoing a lot of good skincare work for a lot of people. By the end of this video, you'll understand what SPF actually measures, the real difference between mineral and chemical sunscreen, how much you actually need to apply, and the small mistakes that are probably costing you protection right now. Let's start with the basics because I think a lot of people use the term SPF without really knowing what it's telling them. SPF stands for sun protection factor, and it's a measure of how well a product protects your skin specifically from UVB rays. The rays primarily responsible for sunburn. In simple terms, an SPF 30 product means it would take roughly 30 times longer for your skin to burn compared to wearing no sunscreen at all, assuming it's applied correctly and in the right amount. That last part, applied correctly and in the right amount, is doing a lot of work in that sentence, and we'll come back to it. Here's something that trips a lot of people up. SPF only tells you about UVB protection. It doesn't tell you anything about UVA protection on its own. UVA rays penetrate more deeply into the skin and are largely responsible for premature aging, the breakdown of collagen and elastin, fine lines, and pigmentation changes over time. This is exactly why dermatologists consistently recommend looking for broad spectrum on the label, because that specifically indicates a product protects against both UVA and UVB, not just burning. Let's pause here for a second. I want you to think about your own daily habits. Do you wear sunscreen on days you're staying indoors, working near a window, or running errands for 20 minutes? If the answer is no, you're in the majority. But this is genuinely one of the areas where the evidence is pretty clear that daily exposure, even indirect exposure through windows, adds up over years. Now let's get into the two main categories of sunscreen because understanding this will help you actually choose one that works for your skin instead of guessing. Mineral sunscreens, sometimes called physical sunscreens, use ingredients like zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. These sit on top of the skin and work by physically reflecting and scattering UV rays away from the surface. Their biggest advantages are that they tend to be gentler and better tolerated by sensitive or reactive skin, and they start working immediately once applied. The trade-off is that they can sometimes leave a visible white or gray cast, particularly on deeper skin tones, though modern formulations have improved a lot on that front. Chemical sunscreens work differently. They contain ingredients that absorb UV radiation and convert it into a small amount of heat, which is then released from the skin. They tend to feel lighter and blend in more easily, which is part of why a lot of people prefer them under makeup. The trade-off here is the opposite of mineral sunscreen. Chemical formulas carry a slightly higher chance of causing irritation in sensitive skin, and they need a short window of time after application before they're fully effective. Here's an honest personal check-in for today. I've actually been rotating between a mineral sunscreen and a lightweight chemical one during this challenge, mainly because I wanted to see how my own skin tolerated each. So far, I haven't noticed irritation from either, but I have noticed the mineral one sits slightly heavier under my other layers, which is a texture preference more than anything else. I'm sharing that because I think it's easy to assume one type is objectively better. In reality, a lot of it comes down to what your skin tolerates and what you'll actually use consistently. And that brings me to a point I think matters more than almost anything else in this video. The best sunscreen is the one you will actually apply correctly every single day. A theoretically perfect sunscreen that sits in your bathroom cabinet unused is protecting no one. Let's talk about how much you actually need, because this is where I think most people are underprotected without realizing it. The general dermatological guideline is roughly a nickel to quarter sized amount, or about 1 teaspoon, just for the face, neck, and ears alone. Most people apply significantly less than that in daily practice, which means they're often only getting a fraction of the SPF protection listed on the bottle. This is actually one of the practical reasons dermatologists often suggest reaching for a higher labeled SPF, like SPF 50 rather than SPF 30. Not because the jump in real protection is dramatic, but because it builds in a margin of safety for the fact that most of us underapply. One more thing worth being clear on. There's no such thing as a truly waterproof sunscreen, only water resistant, which means it holds up for a limited window of time, typically listed on the product before it needs to be reapplied, especially after swimming, sweating, or toweling off. Let's pause again for a moment. Think about your own reapplication habits. Sunscreen protection generally starts to wear down after about 2 to 3 hours, especially with direct sun exposure. If you're indoors most of the day, you likely don't need to reapply as aggressively. But if you're outside active or by a window for extended periods, that 2 to 3 hour window really does matter. Now let's talk about a detail that I think gets overlooked constantly, the areas people forget to apply sunscreen to. The tops of the ears, the hairline and scalp part, the back of the neck, the tops of the hands, and the lips are all areas that get regular sun exposure but are frequently skipped. Over years, that unprotected exposure adds up, and it's part of why you'll often see more visible sun damage in these specific spots compared to areas that are more consistently protected, like the inner arm. Let's also address something you'll see if you have makeup or moisturizer with SPF built in. These products are genuinely useful as an added layer of protection, but they generally shouldn't replace a standalone sunscreen. In practice, most people don't apply anywhere near a full teaspoon of foundation or tinted moisturizer to their face, which means the SPF listed on those products is rarely being delivered at the level tested. Think of SPF containing makeup as a bonus layer, not your primary defense. So let's bring this together with today's recap. SPF measures protection specifically against UVB burning, so look for broad spectrum to also cover UVA aging damage. Mineral and chemical sunscreens both work well. The right choice depends on your skin type and what you'll actually use consistently. Apply roughly a teaspoon for your face and neck, reapply every 2 to 3 hours during active sun exposure, and don't forget the ears, hairline, neck, hands, and lips. And if you're using a moisturizer or foundation with SPF, treat it as a bonus, not a replacement for a real sunscreen. Out of everything in this 30-day routine, this is the step I genuinely encourage you to prioritize even after this challenge ends. I'd love to know, do you currently wear sunscreen every single day, even when you're indoors? Be honest with me in the comments, I read everyone. If this series is helping you build a more complete routine, hit subscribe so you don't miss a day. Tomorrow, we're moving into moisturizers and breaking down when you actually need a gel, a cream, or a sleeping mask. See you tomorrow for day 5.